The following is a presentation of the Radio Misfits Podcast Network.
From the birthplace of modern winemaking, Sonoma, California, welcome to The Winemakers. Local experts Sam Couturi, Bart Hansen, and Brian Casey, along with host John Myers, invite you to listen in as they discuss all facets of winemaking. So sit back, pour yourself a glass, and let's hear what the guys have to say this week.
I'll ask you. I'll answer your technical question. Go ahead.
Well, there's the obligatory
proximity to the mic.
A fist.
Yeah, there you go.
Fist.
Well, you just want to talk in so everybody
I
can
got
hear
up
you.
into the mic to emphasize the point. Is that going to be a problem for someone? Good.
Maybe John on his
Not
headphones.
not a bit.
We don't worry about that.
Hey, everybody, welcome to The Winemakers. I'm John Myers today with Sam Couturi, Bart Hansen, and our guest, not only Tanner Walle, but from New York City, Terroir Restaurant, Paul Grieco. Hey, Paul, welcome to Sonoma, man. How nice to see you.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, welcome, guys. Hey, Sam, how was your radio interview this morning?
This has just been a day of microphones. Good. I was just on live radio, KSBY, with our dear friend Kathleen Hill talking about.
Oh, yes.
It is the. Oh, and our dear friend Randy Feldman drives through the middle of our show, of course.
That Randy
That was Randy in the truck.
Why not?
Today is the most important holiday of the year. International Grenache Day.
Woohoo!
So obviously we're gonna open 17 bottles of Riesling.
Why does that seem to make so much sense?
It's we call it on brand, John. We were on brand.
They will get consumed in some fashion.
I always thought Paul Grieco was taller, but I guess that's because all these Hawk bottles are so tall. I'm like trying to figure out why I thought that.
That's really interesting.
There, right there.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
You know what? I got a Riesling story I'm going to start with. When I first got into the business, I got invited to a tasting group with a bunch of winemakers in Napa Valley. And we're sitting there, and
just for the sake of our guests,
1987.
Okay.
And they're all like a bunch of Davis guys, right? And
then a Petaluma,
and then a kid from Petaluma,
drop
right? And I'm smell this wine, and I'm thinking, God, it reminds me of like being at the gas station. Like, what the hell is this? And all of a sudden, they all start talking about the wines, and they're going, "Oh, this is amazing!" And I'm like, "What is wrong with these people? Is the wine supposed to taste like this and smell like this?" And that was my introduction to Riesling and tastings, quite frankly.
Well, there was a time when there was a lot of Riesling grown in California.
Well, none of these definitely were not.
The grape.
Right.
If I could open with a massive salvo across the bar,
That's
the unicorn wine for any of your listeners should be a Heights Martha's Vineyard Riesling, because it was planted there before it went all cap. So if anyone out there has that goddamn bottle, I will fly you to New York City to crack it with me. And may I just say, International Grenache Day, the reason why we're drinking Riesling is because Grenache is aspirational to Riesling. Let's just be honest about this shit, right? Cheers, people of America.
Cheers.
Ding. Yes. Well, what brings you to Sonoma? Obviously Tanner, but looks like
Tanner Walle and the crew at Valley Wine Bar, and I heard this was the Riesling place to be on this second to last weekend in September, that there is a massive crowd of people coming to celebrate this grape, this wine at this kick-ass joint in this incredible town. And we will fly for that stuff.
I like it. Tanner, congratulations again, man. Things are just going swimmingly for you at the swim club and Harvest.
Yeah.
Nice.
Valley.
Valley, sorry.
Tanner, have you had a conversation with that highway patrolman that sits out in front of the swim club, though?
I sure have.
Yeah.
I've had a few conversations. I bring him coffee every morning, and then I say, "Here's a coffee. Can you not park here today?" And he goes, "Yeah, sorry." And then he goes somewhere else. If you're listening, whoever you are, keep up the good work, but maybe start your path somewhere else than our parking lot.
He just likes the coffee.
Yeah,
Good
he loves
good
the coffee.
Right.
Yeah, I'll tell you more about that later, Paul.
I've been in telling people the show that we were recording today, and tell me if I'm wrong on this. I describe Paul Grieco as the guy who built Tanner as like a wine guy. Is my timeline right there, or did Paul find you in a wine world? Or were you just like strumming your acoustic guitar, trying to be a rock star, and then Paul said, "No, try this"?
My team at Hearth Restaurant in New York City, we had built a manger in a very unknown community in New York City, and all of a sudden there was a bright star one night, and this baby appeared, and we swaddled that baby and our satin band linen and our Riedel stemware and our Sambinet silver and our Limoges china, and we raised him up to be the man, the individual, the restaurateur that he is now. So yes, when Tanner Walle came to New York City from small town Kansas, we didn't know where Kansas was, to be honest with you, but he had a smile and a brightness about him. And he began, I don't think we were the first restaurant for Tanner Walle, but yes, we will take full credit for making Tanner Walle what all of you in Sonoma know him to be today.
Hey, yes.
Well done.
That's all accurate. No. No, I started in. Gee, I don't know how to follow that up.
No, just the facts, Jack.
Yeah. Paul, I would like to mention those who, well, none of you can see. Paul put his hand on my shoulder very gently and gave me the look like I've got this one. In 2005 I moved to New York City, and I was connected through Mike Mraz and Mary Mraz, and I was looking for a job. And Mike Mraz and Mary Mraz, I should say Mary Mraz was Mary Weedle, whom I grew up with. Whom? I think, is that?
With whom?
With whom I grew up with?
I don't know.
I don't know.
It's Grenache Day. We're drinking Riesling.
Yeah, her father, I believe her father delivered me when I was in the manger, but I said I was moving to New York, and she connected me with Paul because Paul, and we'll get into this, I'm sure, but Paul and Mary worked together at Gramercy Tavern in the anyway. You'll get into that.
Yeah. I mean, Hearth also.
Yeah. Well, Hearth. Yes. So by that point,
we ding names that worthy of dinging.
Yeah. And by 2005, Paul and Chef Marco Canora were running a brilliant restaurant. Had broken away from the Danny Meyer sort of group and Union Square Hospitality, which was it called it at that time? Was it always called Union Square Hospitality? Yeah, of course it was.
Now it's called Shake Shack.
Yeah, no, exactly. But anyway, broke out of Kansas, went to New York. I got a hosting job. I could go on about this, but I'm going to keep it at that because I could rattle on. And
suffice it to say, our prime goal in life then was to take the kindness, the niceness of this Kansas boy and inject some kick-ass fucking New York vim and verve and vigor into this young gentleman.
It's weird. I've known this guy for 20 years, and I'm actually nervous talking on a microphone, which I use all the time. Nervous sitting next to this son of a bitch.
Well, let's
there the New York's coming out.
Yeah. Let's talk about the son of a bitch then, or ask him about himself.
Yes, enough about you, Tanner.
Enough about
what
you,
do
Tanner.
You think of me?
What do you think? But the trajectory, the history of the places that you've worked, Paul, is as
sort of
long as it is distinguished, right? But are you a New Yorker by birth? How did you end up in New York?
I'm
doing wine
from
at
Toronto,
Gramercy?
Canada. I was born into a restaurant family.
Okay.
My grandfather opened what was arguably Toronto's first fine dining Italian restaurant in 1962. My first memories of youth were going there as a kid, setting tables, polishing stemware, doing all of those menial restaurant tasks. It's where I saw my father because Monday through Saturday, he was at work, lunch and dinner.
You see front of house or back of house?
All front of those. This was at a time in the restaurant world, and I guess it still exists now, where you would have a padrone running the restaurant, and that individual would hire a chef, but they were nameless, so to speak. The proprietor of the restaurant was the restaurateur, and that's what my family were. And my grandfather opened it. My father worked there on the very first day, and then I was born there in 1965. And through my youth, teenage years, I didn't aspire to do it by any stretch. But I got kicked out of university for, I guess, practicing my hospitality a little bit too much. And my father dragged me in. After being there a few months, he sent me to Italy for 28 days. And I went there in ignoramus, at least of wine. And when I returned 28 days later, I had, forgive me for saying it this way, fallen in love with everything about the wine world. Its connection to things that really rocked my world that I could not exercise in university: religion, history, sociology, geography, geology, the culture of the table, food, all of these things that I found contained in this bottle of grape juice. And that for me was it. And then I took off like a rocket within my family business. But if anyone who's ever been in a family business, you know that they're glorious and they suck. And for me, I found it most intriguing that when the three of us, my grandfather, my father, and I would sit down to have lunch every day to talk about the business, my grandfather and I would agree on the future. This restaurant had been open for 30 years. It was, admittedly, at this point in the 80s, tired. It was not a restaurant for younger diners at that point. It was for your grandparents and your parents. And I needed to change. And my grandfather and I agreed on the change. My father and I were at odds. My mother sat me down one day and said, okay, you see me, you complain about your father. Your father sees me, he complains about you. If I have to choose, I'm choosing your father. I suggest you leave. So I moved to New York in 1991 and then went from there. Remained in the business. This is the only thing I've ever done. So while people know me for being a wine guy, and I'm honored by that, I am first and foremost a restaurateur because I love hospitality. And if we are going to refer to Danny Meyer at this point, because I did work at Gramercy Tavern from 95 to 02, arguably a king of hospitality, but what he really did was help to put words to a concept that we really didn't enunciate very well. And in Danny's depiction of hospitality versus service, it was the conversation versus the monologue. So trying to pull wine into this, when I talk to my staff about hospitality and wine, it's like, okay, this wine glass, it doesn't matter what the fuck is in it, with all due respect to this yummy grape juice. That this is a vehicle, a vessel for conversation, that we, as lovers, admirers of everything that went into this thing, we get to engage with people. And it's that conversation that gets me out of bed every day. At this point in my career, should I still be working the floor of a restaurant 5 days a week? Hell no. I should be home with my family doing other shit. But the energy that I feel from those interactions with guests is irreplaceable. Jumping ahead, during COVID, when we shut down for 15 months, I don't think consumers missed food. We had it delivered at home. They didn't miss drink. We had it delivered at home. They didn't miss service. People brought it to our homes. What they missed was hospitality, that conversation, that interaction. And that's what I still today, 40 fucking years later, still love to do. And wine is a place, a thing that allows me to talk to anyone I see. Could not be more grateful.
Yeah, I mean, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Just beautiful.
It's been a great show this week, you guys, everybody.
Well, listen, I did say at a Holiday Inn Express last night.
All right.
That
Take it easy.
inspired this shit.
Take it easy. I would say, God, see, how do I follow that? I don't even know how to follow that.
Well, can I
Maybe
follow,
you
with,
should
can I
just
follow
go.
with a question?
Yeah, maybe I should go. But I do have a few points I want to make. But let me say something really quick. I could go back further about a lot of those earlier points that you made. But the most important thing, I think, which you would agree, is the hospitality aspect of what we were missing during a thing like COVID. During COVID, I think that the reason that we saw the success, and I think we still continue to see the success as it's residual. Valley is we did create a space of hospitality that was missing inherently during a time where everybody was like you said, everything was brought to your door. And I think we really banked on that. And yes, maybe I'm patting myself on the back a smidge there, but I mean it. Like, that was a time where we had an outdoor space. We spread the tables out. We had half the tables that we do now because, even though people still wearing masks, to a degree, we were able to spread everyone out. And I think that was an opportunity for people to say, like, thankfully, finally, I can get out of the house and enjoy a glass of wine and look other people in the eyes and have that moment of someone taking care of me in a responsible way, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, anyway,
the thing that I missed the most, and even on like the sort of half open mask life world, you missed it. And I think it defines at least our brand of hospitality here is a smile.
Yeah.
You're smiling, the guests are smiling, and everybody's smiling like, it's like the most cliche shit ever, but like literally the world is brighter.
Yeah.
Like you feel better with that bullshit of like relaxes muscles in your face or whatever. But I think that even before the words are spoken, that hospitality, that feeling of like being welcomed with a smile, and which is to my question, from the way the Toronto Italian, fine dining restaurant to even modern fine dining, how did that change? Like, what were the things that you and your grandfather were saying needed to change, and were those things changed and that change realized when you got to New York versus the way that your dad was trying to keep it? Like, how does that world of hospitality sort of changed and sort of relaxed maybe, but also gotten way more intentional?
I wouldn't say necessarily that the hospitality has changed at all. We were not practicing a lot of hospitality per se back in restaurants in the, let's say, up until the mid to late 90s. We would think that service was paramount. And consumers and our guests thought that service was paramount. It was a very formal greeting at the front door.
And service and hospitality
are vitally different.
Right.
I think sometimes they are conflated. They are vitally different. When I ask people about an experience and they said, oh, it wasn't good, and they describe what happened, I said, well, that's not service. That's hospitality that you're really referring to. So the formality of things, at that time, I don't want to say necessary formality, but the servers in tuxedos, the gold drapes, the dark red carpet, how we carried ourselves tableside. Casual was not part of that process. Things had to be very formal in a lock box. And then when we got to the 90s with people like Danny Meyer, that we could loosen up. We could not need to be your friend per se, but we could talk to you in a manner that made you comfortable, made you sit up straight in the chair when I came to the table to ask you what you wanted to do for dinner tonight. Everything relaxed. It became less about how the place looked and the utensils that you used to eat your meal with, and that personal interaction that has risen dramatically in the last 25 years. Again, back to the wine. It's not what's in the glass, even though we revere it. It's everything that surrounds the glass that brings you back to it. Yeah. And I'll jump ahead to, I think, a bigger conversation for all of us in the wine world today. Supposedly, people are drinking less wine. People are sober curious. People are lumping wine into this bigger, broader alcohol consumption and the health detriments of that. And what we are failing to do as wine people is properly tell those stories. The five of us at this table enjoying a glorious Friday morning together, we're drinking a little grape juice, and it's pulling us in, it's making us closer. There's so many stories to tell about that. And we are not translating that to the end user to the degree that we should. And what frustrates me is I see a younger consumer today who is more interested in this shit than ever before. My parents, when they drank wine, wanted white or red, dry, and maybe from a place. Younger people now, open-minded. Tell me about it. Holy crap. Right. With a smile, you can take them anywhere and everywhere. Why are we failing to do that? That might be too big a question for this hour of the day. But anyway.
Well, we have a couple more sips of Riesling. I think we can get there.
Yeah. Exactly.
It's definitely 5 o'clock in Germany.
Yeah.
I mean, you raise a really good point, because this younger generation, they are curious, because all the things that we hear they're drinking that isn't wine it's not like they're drinking grape juice. I mean, they're curious about different types of ciders or perries or whatever co-fermentation it is. Like they're into it.
Or seltzers.
So
I know, but
they are curious about it.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, they are. Yeah. No, I think so. I mean, I do think the sober curious term is fascinating to me, and it's also really kind of bittersweet in a way. No pun intended, I suppose. But like, the sober curious movement is something that the beer that is shooting an arrow into the heads of the beer makers and the brewers, I should say, and certainly some of the winemakers as well. But I want to say one thing about what Paul was going on about. It's that old term. It's that old saying. He used to tell me it's only grape juice, but I've said that to my staff before, that it's only grape juice. But then what you've just said, Paul, is so it really connects. It really spills over into what comes next. It's only grape juice, and therefore this is that's what's bringing us together. It's sort of that thread. And again, I can't really follow up anything you ever say.
I think
I'm probably just gonna go inside
in the sober curious, or like the drink less world conversation. People, the five of us, the kinds of wines that we talk about and care about and drink, are the ones that we should lean in on. So lean in on, drink less fucking White Claw.
Yeah.
Drink less, jug wine from Safeway, and drink more of this. Drink more better.
Yeah.
Drink more better. Drink wine that has stories like,
Or
the
drink less better.
desire.
I was exactly.
No, drink more better.
Well, no, but also like stop drinking a lot of shit and drink less of the really good stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
That is an interesting situation, though. They're drinking a lot more in terms of the White Claws and the seltzers and the ciders and all of that. But it's wine that really has the story, because nobody can tell you about a can of Budweiser that you're going to sit around and open and.
Well, my uncle could.
Well, there you
Kansas.
go. Yeah. But it's interesting. You what would you like to do? What would you like to tell the young people that this is something you really want to check out? Check it out at least.
John, you're a former advertising guy,
Yeah.
yeah? I assume you were a great storyteller. You invented Lunchables, after all.
Yeah.
So I think all of us, I would like to think it's built into our DNA that we respond to a story well told. And I'm not saying that Smirnoff vodka doesn't have a story to tell.
Not much of one.
But
There's a lot of stories that come after it.
Yeah, not all good.
or that Macallan Scotch doesn't have a story to tell, or that Anheuser-Busch Budweiser doesn't have a story to tell. And I will now get a little biblical. There is a reason why, in the book of Genesis, verse 16, I think it is, that the story of Noah and the ark landing on Mount Ararat, the first thing that he did after letting the animals go was plant a vine and grow grapes and make wine. And then if we do believe in the Bible, not going there yet today, wine culture, wine consumption followed humankind as we moved upon the planet. Why was Jesus' first miracle involving wine? Okay, that's for the religious sect out there. The culture of the table, if we go to Europe, wine is rarely consumed without food. I'm a great believer in that. Doesn't have to be a full-on meal. It can just be a tapas, a snack, whatever. But to these statements and reports today about alcohol consumption and sober curious and blah, 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 I see wine mentioned more often as a problem. I don't see people including distilled spirits and beer into that. It's wine is the problem. And so I'm going to come back to, we need to be better storytellers. And I don't think it's me. Could be any of us. And we have more mediums now to tell those stories. Why are we sucking at this so goddamn bad? Why has a wine TV show not succeeded in this country. It's the holy grail for wine people in America. Why have we not been able to do it yet? Look at Food Television Network. Look at all the goddamn cooking shows on TV. I grew up with the Galloping Gourmet and Julia Child, and they had wine on their shows that they were enjoying all the time when they were cooking and talking about it. Yeah. On and on we go. So the solution to the problem for me, John, is us and the stories we tell and how we choose to sell them, forgive me. And I am not saddened. I am invigorated by this opportunity right now to continue doing what I do and to figure out other ways to do it.
I mean, it does seem like, at least, from afar, this is what you and, the places that you've worked and the places that you've started do and specialize in and elevating Riesling.
Well, among many other
among many other things, but we have a table full of Riesling. We're here on International Grenache Day to celebrate the end of the Summer of Riesling. It is. I love the it's the Equinox weekend, right? Equinox is and the full moon started the week. It's been like, I don't know, my head's been crazy this week.
Yeah,
everything's been crazy this week. So there's this there's sort of this confluence, when the two rivers meet, and it's one river's Riesling and one river's Grenache, and they flow side by side
at
for
the confluence of Riesling and Grenache.
And frankly, Grenache is kind of in a similar category where we moved from world of red and white, dried, and then those things sort of got just replaced generically
with
by
all due respect
Grenache
to the Grenache people out there, there is no comparison at all.
Here we go.
There is no way in hell people walk into your...
He was on his...
the subject being... This is, and you'll agree that red and white for most people just became Cab and Pinot on one side and Chardonnay on the other, and talking about a specific variety, something that can be made in a ton of different ways. So let's talk about Riesling. Saved it. Wow. Landed the plane. It was a bumpy landing.
No. I know.
But why did you, the Summer of Riesling, I know that you were there. Why did you guys go this summer? We're just going to fucking pour Riesling until the 21st of September. Mm-hmm. What was the inspiration?
Well, I can say, if we're going to go back to the OG day of the beginning of Summer of Riesling in 2008, that Tanner Walle,
I can chime in,
kind, humble gentleman to my left, was thrilled about this. But the point of Summer of Riesling is not to say, never has been, that Riesling is the bestest, the greatest. No. On a very simple level, all we are saying is it is one of. And what we can say, if we're going to dive deep right now, is we have historical proof that it was one of the greatest at the turn of the 20th century. And then things went to shit for reasons that I completely understand and get. So I don't want to lop it into all of these other grapes that may not get proper respect in the marketplace. After all, there are apparently 1,500 wine grapes. There are 365 days in the year, and I see some very thirsty people in front of me, and maybe you're good for 2 bottles of different grapes a day, but still.
Drink more better.
Okay. So it's like, to Summer of Riesling, the beautiful thing about being a restaurateur, and arguably, there are not many beautiful things, but the beautiful thing is that you get to exercise in so many different areas. You get to be an architect, an interior designer, a musicologist, a florist, a cook, a wine person, a service. All of these different disciplines take form in this restaurant that you build from scratch. I don't know many other industries that allow you that wide berth of artistic expression. It's pretty fucking cool. Yeah. And then you get to bring in your own personal stuff. For me, when we looked at the original terroir, 550 square feet, Stephen Solomon, my partner, Marco Canora, who was the chef partner, were like, holy fuck, this is really not much bigger than a sandbox we had as kids. And my vague recollection of that sandbox was, I love being in the sandbox. was my toys, my friends, my rules. From a financial standpoint, literally no rent charged at this place. And I knew from a business standpoint, 3 employees, all hourly rate employees. The cost of doing business was minimal. Therefore, I could do whatever the fuck I wanted at Terroir. And we had a group of people working with us at the time, including Tanner, who were willing to do it and to embrace it. So as a New York Somm, who when Somms would get together and at the end of service and crack open a bottle of grape juice and shoot the shit with each other, we quickly got to the topic of, so Tanner, gentlemen, what's your favorite grape? What's your favorite bottle of wine you had recently? Da-da-da-da-da. What are your top 5 grapes? And every wine person in the top 3 would say Riesling is one of them. And in the back of my brain, I'm thinking, okay, cool. But last time I went to your restaurant, I didn't see any Rieslings by the glass. Right. Or if you did, you had one and it was an Uber Sweetie. Like, what the fuck? That's not the world of Riesling, but you do have 3 different Pinot Noirs on there, right? So for this stated love affair with Riesling, why are you not doing anything about it? So fast forward to Terroir, I could do something about it. I had very little fear of failure. So we opened in March
2008.
2008.
But who's counting?
And as I was thinking about what we were going to do in this place, like we did things that to me were no-brainers, easy, yet to people who walked in, be like, why the fuck are you doing that? Like things like we'd have 5 different Nebbiolos, a Barolo, a Barbaresco, something from Alto Piemonte, a Gattinara, a Carema, and a Inferno from Lombardy. And people are like, oh my God, that's insane. You guys are so like, really? How? This is what normal shit, just grapes. And then I was thinking through the year up ahead. I was like, well, this summer, just Summer of Riesling seemed to come together. We are not saying that summer's the only time to drink that shit, but alas. So I said, fuck it. This summer, we're only going to pour Riesling as our white wine by the glass. 35 Rieslings by the glass. And Mr. Tanner Walle, along with Nick and Mark and Jessica, they were on the front line of this assault on our guests and consumers. And so people would walk into the restaurant and, hey, how are you? Welcome to Terroir. What would you like to do tonight? I'd like a glass of Chardonnay. Sorry, we don't have Chardonnay. Okay, well, that's sort of odd. Most popular grape on the fucking planet. How about a Sauvignon Blanc? You know, you got to have that. Yeah, no, so sorry. No Sauvignon Blanc. God damn it. What the fuck is this place? Okay, Pinot Grigio. You got to have a Pinot Grigio. Yeah, no. Well, what do you have? Riesling. Is that it? Yeah. Well, this is fucking stupid. And the staff, Tanner, would say, yeah, we know it's fucking stupid, but that's the owner of this goddamn joint.
Yeah. And I wouldn't put it that way.
So we went and because...
It put me into... I had to find the alternative and then that expanded my brain to Riesling. And then you're like, oh, but it is so versatile. Sometimes I would get so sick of trying to convince people that we had Riesling that I would blind them on stuff and be like, this is the perfect Chard. And I'd say, no, that's actually Comtal Riesling. And they'd be like, oh, well, then I'm not drinking it, you know? And that was the first couple of years. Sorry to interrupt you, Paul.
But you know, to the point, if Brian's Brian's providing hospitality right now, but as he would always say when he was at the Girl and the Fig, and people would come in and say, "I'd like a glass of Chardonnay," and he'd have to say, "We don't have Chardonnay," and they would say that same thing. It opened up a conversation.
Of course it did,
right?
Yeah.
And what a beautiful thing that is.
Of course, and say, can I just give me a chance here? Let me show you some cool shit. And then I bring over 3 glasses, and what Paul always instilled was like. It's great. Just splash. Like pour them an ounce, tell them what it is, tell them the story, let them choose. And if they don't like it, move on to the next fucking thing and try it again. And like that was our sandbox. Like that was what we did. It's like, you know, like, oh, you don't want this toy, then here, play with this toy, fill this one up with sand or whatever. But like, that's what we did. And like, there would be times where I'd be like, this person doesn't want this, or this. And I just grab like my arm, like an armful of bottles and go over to the table and set up a bunch of glasses, pour them out and go down the line and tell them what everything is. Tell them what I liked, tell them what I don't think they're going to like, but they should try it anyway. And then we'd always sell them fucking Riesling. And then that list of 35 went from 35 to 60 to 80. I think the highest BTG Riesling we ever had was maybe in the what was it in East Village? Do you remember?
Well, no one's here to correct us, so pick a number.
I think at one point, I think between all the sweeties and everything else, I want to say we had something like it was between 60 and 70 Rieslings by the glass at one point. Maybe not that much. It was somewhere between like 50 and 60, but I remember it was pushing 60, and it was just like, what the fuck? But at that point, I mean, we were, and it was really cool because all these young kids, speaking of sort of the demographics of wine consumption at that time, like post 2008, the crash and all that stuff, we had all these young kids coming in, and of course we were really involved in the community. I know that sounds very Sonoma-y, but like, you know, we were cultivating all these relationships with a lot of young kids who were really wine curious and grape curious and not sober curious, and coming in, and they just wanted to drink Riesling, and what am I drinking today? And I swear to God, by the end of the East Village spot, I could pour anyone anything, dry, you know, off dry, sweet, whatever, and they'd be like, give me more. And that's what Paul created. That's what we created. My experience in New York wine is mostly entirely from the producer work with reps out of it. The reps of New York City, those ravenous sharks that they are, must have been in a tizzy trying to get you guys Rieslings. It must have just been like pounding on your door all hours of the day with another tall, skinny bottle.
It certainly shocked me. I didn't think about it from a business standpoint other than my chef partner, Marco, hating it because cuisine-wise,
not a fan.
We were sort of Italian-centric, and he's like, what the fuck? Can you not at least give me some Italian varietal by the glass to go with this food that is Italian, like your background too? And I was a stubborn ass, which led to our breakup in 2014. Like, no. Like, the beauty of your food is that it's balanced and goes with everything. The beauty of Riesling is that it's balanced and goes with everything. I just to try and wrap it up, because I don't want to bore people, is that the overall change in wine conversations for consumers over the last 25 years by the glass is that in 1998, a consumer would step up to a bar and say, glass of Chardonnay, please. Glass of Merlot, glass of Cabernet. And that transition that happened into the early to the mid-O's was, what do you have by the glass? That doesn't sound like a lot, but it's a seismic shift that allowed wine people on the restaurant side and maybe even retailers to say, oh, this is what I have. What do you like? Try this. And so I don't think whatever we did at Terroir with any wine or grape, including Riesling, was really revolutionary in any way. We just had conversations, and maybe that will be the most overused word in this pod today. That's all I wanted to have. And to go back to Danny Meyer and hopefully put a bow on this goddamn thing, enlightened hospitality is what he calls his overarching philosophy. At Terroir, we practice aggressive hospitality, confrontational hospitality. And if you look at the wine list, it is fucking overwhelming.
I encourage you all to go to the website and look at it.
It is intimidating. It is completely wrong. It is not user friendly. It is everything that is bad. And I do that on purpose so that you close the goddamn book and look at me in the eye when I come to your table, and hopefully I will have a smile and we have a goddamn conversation.
And it usually starts with, what the hell is this all about? And they close the book. Sorry, I didn't interrupt.
No, and so I would like to think from, if you talk to many restaurateurs, be it back of the house or front, they just want to give people things that they're proud of, that they made today, that they found at the farmer's market or whatever. And so maybe the ultimate restaurant that I will create, for me at least, no menu, no wine list. We're going to come to the table and we're going to talk, and then we're going to serve you food and fucking drink, because isn't that what it's all about?
You like to tell stories, don't you?
Yeah.
Well, and it's in your name, Terroir. And so many of the stories are about terroir. I mean, where each of these is grown, how it's sourced, how it's grown, who does it, why. and how it comes out.
I mean,
and other wines also. I mean, around the world, terroir is it's all about sense of place.
And it is, and what we forget, John, is that we are part of terroir. Without us, there is no terroir. We need us to give voice to what we're growing, how we're growing it, where we're growing it. So we are involved in this conversation.
My dad's fifth element of terroir. You know, you have the climate, the vintage, the geology, the aspect, whatever. It's the attitude of the grower. Right. You know, the attitude of the winemaker, the attitude of the, you know, and it's in the attitude of the person serving the wine.
Even wine that's an attitude
that feeds into the experience. You know, the person tasting it. We always talk about, like, you know, the biodynamic calendar, and we can, you know, we've already done our religious portion of the show, so we don't need to go too far in it. But the astrological things, the full moon, the equinox, are they changing the way the wine tastes, or is it changing something in your body, in your, you know, palate, and your sinuses, whatever, that are making you taste the wine differently that day? And so, you are, the consumer is a piece of the terroir. You know, what is going on with you physically, emotionally, are parts of the way that wine is going to express itself that day. And, you know, talk about the story. That's something that you can't say about a cocktail or a beer. Right?
Well, listen, I do think you can, and I'm not here to say that wine is better than only. All of those. It's different, has a different place. I guess I am arguing that fact, but anyway, it's
a wine podcast. We're supposed to argue that fact.
But back to our consumers and guests, from a marketing standpoint, aren't people into experiences now, less the purchase of a product? This experiential economy of ours, and we have an unbelievable experience in that glass of grape juice to present to our guests. How and why are we fucking this up so bad?
Because we're talking too much about the fermentation esters and the barrel program, and the, you know, you get caught up as winemakers, we do, you know, and if you can step away from that and share your stories about why you're making the wine or the vineyard that it came from, you know, less about how it's made, more about what you feel about it and why you're driven to make the wine and share it.
I will say, sorry to interrupt, Tanner, that generally I do not allow winemakers onto the floor of my restaurant. If I'm going to do an event, I rarely, if ever, have a winemaker come in and talk, because they bore the shit out of me. Because as you just said, all they want to talk about is how they made the fucking product.
Right.
And I can look out there across the room and I can see our guests' eyes glazing over. One, they don't know the terms. And two, they really don't give a fuck. Does the wine taste yummy? Okay, cool. Tell me other shit. You have more stories than your viticultural and your vinicultural practices. For Christ's sake,
that's
with
one,
all due respect.
That's one thing I've tried to instill in our staff is, and no offense to winemakers, of course, that has nothing to do with, especially in a community like this, but like, find a story, find something to draw in the guest that doesn't just involve numbers and metrics and dates. Dates, you know, that's a broader term, but find a real story. When I tell my staff to make notes on the wines, just of course you got to make notes on what it tastes like, et cetera, so you can sell the wine, but find a really fucking cool story. And that's what you always told me. And that's when I would bring everything over. So this guy is really cool. This guy's really cool. He came in a couple of weeks ago, and he's got a mohawk, and his dog's name is Rex, and it's really cool. No, that's not exactly what I would say, but I mean,
can totally see some like Riesling producer showing up and trying to work with his mohawk.
But more importantly, like one of the things I loved. Let me give an example really quick. The Schloss Johannesburg story of when the Pope sent out the men on horses to tell them when to harvest, and they got something happened and they didn't make it in time to tell the estate when to harvest, and therefore the wines What's the whole story there? Just tell me it really quick. So,
well, it goes back to the days 1775, specifically harvest, and in Western Europe, where Christianity ruled the land, and certainly vineyards were part of that. That nothing could happen at the winery, at least in this part of the Rheingau, to the local prelate gave a thumbs up. And so at Schloss Johannesburg, an estate on the northern side of the Rhine River, the church official lived on the southern side, and he would look across and he would send out a messenger on a horse to go to the winery and say, okay, harvest. Well, in this year, 1775, we don't know exactly what happened, but that messenger was waylaid for a week. And by the time he arrived, and the pickers could not touch the grapes. They stood by the vineyard, watched the grapes begin to become overripe. Mm-hmm. And so when he finally arrived, the messenger, they had no choice but to harvest, because there had to be a crop, a product produced here, because the church needed grape juice, blah, blah, blah. And so they harvested the grapes and they made the wine. And no one expected anything good to come of this. But lo and behold, the cellar master in March of 1776 went into that cellar, took a sample out of a tank, and I'm quoting now, people of America, said, "Holy fucking shit. This is some glorious wine."
But he said it in German.
And that was not officially purposeful, but somewhat purposeful late harvest Spätlese wine, 1775 at Schloss Johannesburg. Cool shit like that. Those stories abound in the world of Riesling. No more than any other grape or wine region, but they exist for Riesling.
Well, and can we just like talk technical on Riesling for a little bit, because it is
Let's get a little bit of an education here.
Yeah, it's still a little. I want to try that. We our friends at Desire Lines
we can actually
dropped off a bunch of.
We can actually get some of this.
Their Riesling.
That's the
Massa Vineyard. What year is this? This is the 23?
This is 22 from Carmel Valley.
The Massa Vineyard.
Yeah, the Massa Vineyard, yeah.
But
this is their first, this is the cabinet style. So a little bit RS. More RS. I think it's 9. No, it's down to 7.5. Amazing.
Yeah. So will you just give us a little sort of Rieslingish education? Because I know a little bit about it, but there's all these words, Spatzlese and cabinet and all these that aren't necessarily part of your average wine terminology. So will you just and the names
and Johannesburg and Gray and
the names have to do more with when it's picked and not necessarily whether it's sweet or not, right? So it can be a really confusing category for people, I think. So you just give us a little Riesling 101.
Yeah, I don't know if it is the font or the typeface style on a German label, or all the words that seem to scare people away. But let's be honest about it, people of America. Antinori Tignanello, one of the greatest and most important Italian wines crafted in the last 50 years, started a revolution in that country. Do you have any goddamn clue what the grapes are on it? No. Does it say on the label, front or back, what the grapes are? No goddamn clue. Yet, you go to a goddamn retail shop and you're willing to drop $100 or come to my restaurant and spend hundreds of dollars, and you're not looking at me saying, "Paul, the label confuses me. I don't understand what the hell's in there, goddammit." Yet, faced with the Riesling label, all of a sudden, you start shaking and shrinking back into a corner. What the fuck? So, beginning, Riesling, like every other goddamn grape out there, produces wines like every other goddamn grape out there. If we have to talk about the dreaded S word, sugar, which shouldn't be dreaded, 75% of Riesling produced in Germany are dry.
This is what I would always say to people back in the day, this little thing.
And it's not just Paul made up dry. It is defined by the EU as dry, less than 9 grams of RS. And listen, some of those other grapes and wines that you enjoy, there is residual sugar in there, in California Pinots and Cabs and Zins, that you never, ever talk about.
Or question.
But anyway, you save all of that shit for Riesling. Fine. Okay, so Riesling. And listen, a quick
Is that, Paul, because they tasted Blue Nun and Wedding Veils?
See, John, we're showing our age right now.
But this is also a conversation
I will
that I've
assume
had a
most
lot
of our
with guests.
consumers have never had it, nor heard of Blue Nun, but it is arguably one of the most important wines of the 20th century, and that it was the most popular wine on the planet in the 60s and early 70s. Then it was replaced by Mateus. And then along came Kendall Jackson Reserve Chardonnay. And then along came Yellowtail. And so it had an important place, and that it was a gateway drug for many people, especially Americans. If we talk to our get everyone call your grandparent on the phone right now and ask them if they ever had Blue Nun. The answer is going to be yes, and tell them to describe, and they will say it was yummy wine. So, but that, we're jumping ahead in history here, that is Germany post-World War II, which was a shit show.
It's bringing me all back to my feels.
Infrastructure was a mess. Everything was a mess. But an economic miracle happened there. They rebuilt that goddamn country. It was the introduction, wine-wise, of the sterile filter. A bottle of Riesling from the Mosel River Valley 120 years ago was, for the most part, dry. A wine with residual sugar was a gift of Mother Nature, a rarity, and was honored as such. But most of the wine would ferment for years. Harvested in the fall, go into barrel, ferment, would stop in the winter as the cellars were too cold, start again in the spring, keep going. But there were no market pressures to put that wine into bottle after 6 months. It would remain in barrel for years, and then it would finally go to market, and it was dry. Dry, except for those noble sweeties. Post-World War II, sterile filter comes into play. Sugar was fucking expensive. What's a great place to get sugar? Cheap.
Extracting
wine.
Yeah.
I run that wine from the previous harvest, still fermenting or not finished fermentation, through a sterile filter in the following spring, and I get wine with residual sugar. And those, for the most part, those wines went to the world market. A German doesn't know what the fuck Blue Nun is.
Yeah.
That was for us in
What-
America and beyond.
And I'd like to buy the World of Coke kind of thing, where the sweet tooths started to skyrocket in the 60s and 70s,
Right.
and I remember you used to say that a lot during these conversations. Anyway, continue.
Are you guys ferment fans?
I don't think that is a grape we're talking about today, John. We're only allowed
No, I do
two
understand,
grapes at
Paul.
this table.
Yes, I
Grenache
actually have some
and
ferment
Riesling.
right now at Riesling at Valley. But anyway, yes, sorry.
You
So
guys,
the
I got to
listeners
go
out-
provide some hospitality. It was great meeting you.
Have a great conversation, Mark.
I can't wait to hear the rest of this.
Yeah.
Have a good one, Bart.
Okay,
So-
so the world is on Blue Nun.
So, and it had an important place, but unfortunately, it inculcated in people's brains, certainly in America, that German Riesling was sweet. It also coincided with a time when America and Americans were changing. They were becoming more food and wine centric. And the marketing people, maybe even John, would hit the streets of New York, and you'd go around in the 1950s and say to people, so young man, Tanner is your name, I think. What type of wine do you like? And Tanner would think, and he'd say, I did serve in World War II in the theater in Europe. And yeah, when we got to Germany, we drank those wines, and I really liked the sweet ones that I tried. So all of a sudden, the marketing people said, this Tanner Walle dude, sweet wine. And so that's what the Germans exported, because that's what Americans supposedly wanted. When you talk to Germans with some years under their belts and about their wine world, they've always been producing and drinking dry wine. We just never fucking got them. But unfortunately, for our parents and grandparents' generation, it created this mindset that German Riesling, sweet. But back to those technical details. So that's one thing that is false. In terms of the label, I had a glorious visit yesterday with Pax Mall and tried a bunch of his Syrahs. Okay, that's our fourth great mention today. I apologize. And I asked him about, how is Syrah doing in the marketplace? Lousy, he said. It's like, why? Because people look at a bottle of Syrah and they don't know what they're getting. Are they getting a leaner, meaner, drier, more streamlined style? Are they getting big, fat, rich over the top? They can't tell. By the way, people of America, if you pick up a bottle of Riesling and you want to know if it's dry or sweet, look at the alcohol.
Absolutely.
If the alcohol is 12.5 or above, dry. If it's going to be 10 or less, there's residual sugar. Period. Amen. There is your skeleton key to unlocking the glories of a bottle of goddamn Riesling. Now, in terms of
crowd goes wild.
A German wine, because Riesling is made in other places, but German Riesling and all of those words. For all of you who criticize a wine label for not knowing what's in the bottle, the Germans are on fucking point. They tell you everything that is going on with that wine, with all due respect to almost every other producer who keeps information back from you. So much so that you're going to look on a bottle of German wine and you're going to see the letters AP with a long number following it. You could actually go onto a website and get all of the information about that wine. But again, your skeleton key, if there's a word ending in ER, that's the village where it was grown. I'm from New York now. I'm a New Yorker. The word that follows is the goddamn vineyard. Look at the alcohol level to know that it's dry or sweet. All of the other words that mentioned were a reference to that grape at harvest. Cabinet, Spätlese, Auslese, Bernauslese, Trockenbernauslese, Eiswein. That tells you the shape of the grape when I went to the vine and picked the goddamn thing. It is a different story when I get it into the winery. Am I fermenting it dry? That's what's going to be Trocken. If I leave a little bit more residual sugar, that could be Halbtrocken or Feinherb today. On and on and on you go. So ladies and gentlemen, people of America, German wine labels are perfect.
All these things, I'm having such flashbacks now. I haven't heard all of these things in years. And
can you tell I've had about 3 cups of coffee so far today?
No, it's a fantastic.
What's the coffee they're serving in Valley these days? It's good. I had a cup this morning also.
Camber from Bellingham. These are all talking points. I'm having these crazy flashbacks, and now it's all coming back to me, and now I'm back to life. I'm resuscitated.
For those people out there who know Tanner Walle, he is a sweater and not the piece of clothing. And I think right now he is sweating just remembering all of these stories.
I'm not, actually. I feel really good.
His terroir days.
I feel pretty good at this point. But I'm sweating I'm sweating sitting next to you like I shouldn't even be here.
That's silly.
I know, I'm just kidding.
Don't worry about it.
I'm kidding. I've known this gentleman. He's my mentor and a bit of a I always call him like my stepdad. And
except your actual stepdad doesn't like it when you
no, exactly. Well, I don't know if Paul likes me all that much, but just kidding. So to have him here is such an honor. And it's it's truly a little surreal.
This is coming out after our Summer of Riesling finale here in Sonoma.
Yeah.
But will you just give us a rundown of all the things that are happening tonight?
Of course. Yeah. So
all the things that you will have missed if you're listening to this next week?
Exactly. So Paul reached out and said, "Hey, what do you think about doing a Summer of Riesling finale, if you will, in Sonoma?" And I said, "Of course. And then it's September 21st. So this is the last weekend, quite a big weekend in Sonoma, certainly with harvest. There's the Transcendence thing going on. It's just busy time. This is our busiest time of the year.
This
is the busiest time of year, which is explaining why Paul is staying at the Best Western. Just kidding, Paul.
It's a great hotel.
The bestest. It is Best Western.
It is. It has all 3 things that matters: location, and location.
Exactly. Anyway, Paul, when quick backstory, he would always tell me when I was playing music and working at Terroir, he would always say, "One day you're going to own a restaurant." I said, "No, I'm not. No, I'm not." "Yes, you are." "No, I'm not." "Well, you should." "Okay, well, maybe one day." And I move out here, of course, meet my wonderful wife. I met her in New York, but moved out here for her, to be with her rather, not for her, but to be with her. She did offer to move back to New York, and I said, "No, it's time that I leave." And came out to Sonoma. Met Emma and Steph, and we opened the restaurant. Anyway, when we opened, Paul said, "Okay, I'm going to come out. If you do open this restaurant, if it goes through, I'm going to come out and mop the floors." Well, it took him almost 5 years to come out and mop the floors, but
the floors are really dirty.
The floors are disgusting. Thank God you're finally here. So back to your question about the programming for this weekend. Tonight we're doing a private event upstairs in our Up Valley PDR space. with a really brilliant menu from Emma and Steph, along with some bangers that sort of take us back to those early days in the East Village, German, Austrian, some domestic, and the like. And I should say Australian. And then tomorrow, there will be a trickle in of BTG Riesling available.
35?
Yeah. And yes, 35. No, I don't know about 35. We'll see about that. But trickling into the evening, we'll have sort of the classics, the Valley classics in terms of food, with a few extra fun dishes. And then we're going to have a really pretty robust, at least for Sonoma, a pretty robust Riesling list with a lot of BTG and some really, really cool one-off bottles that we are very excited to educate our staff on and share with Sonoma.
Cool.
Yeah.
What do you think of Sonoma Rieslings?
Well, that question is putting me on the spot. These are all Monterey.
Not all.
Mendocino's on one.
No, Anderson Valley, and then this is close to Monterey. Correct. So these are all Desire Lines.
They were made in town, though.
They are made in town. Yeah.
Well, I think Gundlach was the
You just
first
said
one
Monterey.
I had.
I just pointed it out to you. Yeah.
Gundlach Bunchu was the first Riesling I had out here.
Mhm.
Listen, I think the summer of Riesling is about the world of Riesling.
Mhm.
If we appear German-centric, it's because it's the birthplace of the grape. But we should remind ourselves, the country with the biggest plantings of the Riesling vine is the United States of America, people of America. Australia is in the top 3 too. So it is a world of Riesling, and we honor it all. California, as stated, I think, at the beginning of this pod, was Riesling-centric back in its early days. There was more Riesling before there was Chardonnay. And for me, I've had very few of them. But if anyone comes or emails me because they found a bottle of Stony Hill Riesling from the 50s or 60s, I will fly you to New York City. But anyway, Monterey has, I think, the biggest plantings, or had the biggest plantings of the grape in the state. But what's going on in Santa Barbara right now? What's going on in, like, Napa shocks the shit out of me that we're growing Riesling there on paper. But when you go up into the hillsides, I get it. Sonoma, admittedly, I've not had a lot, but why shouldn't there be? We'll go closer to the coast, cooler growing climate, those diurnal swings, everything about this world of wine today in California, which is now more exciting than at any point in my 40 years of opening bottles of grape juice, that Grenache. Riesling potentially could become one of the more important grapes of this incredible county. So more Sonoma Riesling coming my way, I do hope, John.
That's a good idea.
My parents actually met picking Riesling grapevines.
Really?
It was at the Rossi Ranch, which was, in a 1910 planting. And obviously mostly Zinfandel and Alicante Petit Syrah, but now it's a goat pasture. There was a small plot of, block of Riesling vines down by the creek at the Rossi Ranch, and it wasn't doing well in 1977. And old man Val Rossi sent my mom, because she picked fast, and my dad, because he could carry heavy boxes, over to the block of Riesling, and they spent all afternoon in the block of Riesling picking this, Harvest 77. So, I got
Rossi Ranch 77.
Rossi Ranch 77.
Is there a bottle of that anywhere?
I've if out there, I'll fly you to me if you have a bottle of Rossi Ranch 77 somewhere.
I'll pick you up in my truck.
Probably went to it probably went into like something that the Paganis were making. Just into red wine that got put into it,
So let's just say that your manger was built from Riesling vines.
My manger was
Full
built
circle.
from. It took me 5 years to show up in that manger, but yes, it was. To show up. I was a late baby Jesus.
Paul, what have we not talked about? What have we not covered this morning?
Holy crap. I'll return to a statement, and hopefully it will take me down a different pathway, that Riesling is just like every other grape, every other wine out there. And in so doing, and I will acknowledge all the different styles, so you might say that the glory of Riesling is that variety of Riesling. But the problem of Riesling is that variety
Yep.
of Riesling. And I would say to you, don't be afraid of that. Embrace those differences. No grape can do what Riesling can do. It does not, once again, mean that Riesling is better than. It is just the same as. A real Riesling diehard might say, because of the nature of the grape, it gives voice to terroir
Transparent.
in a manner that no other grape can, other than maybe Pinot Noir, because of that transparency that Tanner just mentioned. That in the hands of a winemaker who is less is more, who allows that terroir, that grape, all of that shit that we've talked about to shine through, what ends up in your glass is something that is shocking, that is exhilarating, that is vital, that is yummy, that is all of those things that you love about every other grape, and that it should be in your arsenal of varietals and wines that you engage with at the dinner table every goddamn day. Period.
Ding ding. So what's hot in New York right now? What?
Fru Burgunder. I'm just making that up.
No, I mean, it is
the
fall
fall
I'm sure
of Fru Burgunder.
Fru Burgunder fall. I'm booking my ticket.
I will say, what's hot in New York?
Yeah, I'm sure obviously
do people in New York listen to this podcast?
Yes.
Okay, so
at least a few
then
of them.
if you are in New York, please either listen more intently or tell me to F off next time you see this. I think New York City right now, that we as somms, beverage people, have gotten a little bit lazy. I think what is hot in New York is that our wine programs are not as exciting as they once were. I think coming to many other markets across this country, wherever they are, more people are doing more exciting things in places other than New York. We have all the wines available on the planet Earth in our marketplace. If all of us were in New York right now, you have 55,000 different wines that you can buy to put on our wine list. Why are we not more excited by a wider range of wines? And it's not just in that the style of the winemaking, but in terms of places that grow those grapes, in terms of the different varietals, all of these things. But there's too much sameness in what's going on in the market. And I really don't know of anyone who's pushing an envelope, having unique conversations to make our world of grape juice in that city. We have simply put gotten lazy. So that's not new and exciting, I will grant you.
It is at least a temperature of the marketplace. Yeah. And I mean, I imagine if you talk to our friends and us, the wines that we're selling in New York has definitely sort of fallen into a sameness rut. But if they're selling it all,
kind of like,
How lucky we are, though, as wine people in this day and age. When John and I were beginning our wine drinking days, the world of grape juice was very small.
Yeah.
My God, when we spoke about Spain back, we started drinking when, John, the 70s? Then you had to know Rioja
College.
and maybe sherry, and that was
Or
it.
Matus or Annie Green Springs.
That's
or anything.
Portugal, John. But, if we went to Portugal, it was port and Matus. So, but look at Spain alone right now can build you a wine program with hundreds of selections. Every wine, it's unbelievable to be a wine fan today. And so my challenge to everyone out there, never drink the same wine twice. Maybe if there's winemakers listening, they're not going to like that.
Unless it's 16600.
Well, Paul, Brian Casey had totally retrained me, because the first wines I drank were Matus with a girlfriend in college. Every girl in Lancer bottle with a candle in it and all the things that yeah, that's college, 70s. And then I really got into, when I went to Bordeaux, that was it for me. I just stayed a Bordeaux freak, and that was it. And when I get to the Girl in the Fig here in town that has the Rhone style, Brian's the one who turned me on to, first of all, Grenache, and then all of the others that they had. And he pretty much single-handedly opened my eyes and taste buds to everything, including Riesling, because I was the guy who married into a German family who was cheap, and they drank Blue Nun and Wedding Veil. Those are the two I remember from that time.
Maybe they had the good shit in their cellar and they just didn't
yeah.
John's coming over again. Pull out the blue nun.
So,
Quick, grab the blue nun.
yeah, seriously. But, I have been really, my eyes have been opened tremendously, but I'm in a group of people who talk about it.
It's a conversation.
Yeah. What's wrong with having a wine bar in New York City where you serve all of these different things and have people bring you wines from around the world? Imagine the stories you could tell about that. Maybe that's a way to set a fire. I don't know. I think
that is Terroir bar.
Yeah, well, there you go.
That's-
But he's really totally concentrating on Riesling there, right? No. Okay, please
No.
tell me.
The wine list there is, as thick as Project 2025, but way more, way better reaching.
Just as confrontational.
Aggressive
Wine list Valley is about this.
Okay. You
Why
focused
did I say
on
that?
Riesling all morning
I'm so
though.
used to saying it.
So what else are you serving and how's that going? I mean, what's the next?
So that was kind of my question too, was like, obviously people are coming to Terroir still forever since 2008 because, for the Summer of Riesling, which there is no off season. But is there any like surprising varietal orders
to be
happening
honest,
right
and
now?
I'm not saying this just because of where I'm sitting on this beautiful Friday morning, but California wines that prompted by Patrick Cappiello and some of his rantings on social media
Friend of
about
the
we
pod.
need to drink more California grape juice. I have more California grape juice on my by the glass list and wine list than I've ever had in the history of Terroir because I've opened my mind. I needed a little kick in the ass to get there, but I am invigorated by what I am finding in this Golden State of yours, and not just with the usual varieties.
Who kicked you in the ass?
Well, it was the rantings of Patrick Cappiello, and then I don't necessarily self-flagellate, but if I could kick myself in the ass, I do a pretty good job of it every morning when I look in the mirror. So it was just I am not bored. I am never bored, and when I am bored, I will leave this industry. Wine does not bore me. Meeting these people, these places, these varietals, I am still as invigorated today by our world of grape juice as I've ever been. And I look not necessarily at what I have bought or serve at Terroir, but what I have not yet bought. And people say, well, what's your favorite wine? And it's a non-answer, but, well, it's what I tried this afternoon. Right now, if you were to ask that, it's this glass of Desiree Wines, Massa Vineyard, Riesling.
Desire wines.
Desire lines.
Desire lines.
It's all good.
That's okay. I called you
That's my
Harvest.
favorite wine.
Valid.
And then what I try this afternoon, that'll be my favorite wine. So it's always something new and different. And that back to your original
Pour him some
question.
Grenache real quick.
It's like 16,700.
some wine from up the hill. Some terroir driven wine from up the mountain.
Any Riesling in Enterprise Vineyards future?
I don't know. Maybe.
I mean, that would be really cool.
The Sky Vineyard folks, I don't know if they're making it anymore. They made Riesling for a little
They
while.
did, yeah, I don't think
they planted some up there, but I don't know if it's doing well up there. I'm not sure.
I heard about this recently. I can't recall exactly, but somebody did tell me about Sky.
Yeah, they have some Riesling aspirations. Look, if the place is right and the owners are willing, Enterprise Vineyards will plant anything. We even grow Pinot Noir and Chardonnay. Not much, but some. So, and that's, when it comes to a variety, you plant it, you try it, try, and you never, it's always a work in progress, but you find the place or you have the place and you try and fit the right combination of rootstock, variety, and clone to make that place shine. When you're in the Moon Mountain District on a, southwestern exposure, it's probably not the best place to plant Riesling, but maybe on the northeastern exposures up there and down in the bottom of the canyon where the sun shines a little less and the cold air moves in a little more, might be a cool spot to plant some Riesling. So if you get the spot, you plant the grape.
Where does Jeff Bunchu grow his Rieslings?
I mean, I'm sure they have some there at, they call it Rhine Farm.
Yeah.
So, that's where the
think it's on
Verts
property?
is. And that's a much cooler spot than, most of the places that we farm. So, I know it works. They've been doing it for 5 generations.
Yeah.
So
I could try and wrap it back around to this California thing. One of the more exhilarating wines I've had in the last few years was the Mission Grape from Cucamonga, made by Raj Par. Like, fuck me. Talk about an unbelievable piece of history in this state. Foundational grape, originally planted by the Franciscan friars, Junipero Serra, and 100-year-old vines. This vineyard was dead, not cultivated. It took Raj and Abe Schoner years to revitalize this parcel of land. So that wine, that thrills the shit out of me. I'm having more conversations about Trousseau and Trousseau Gris in California right now than I've ever had before. You have a bevy of varietals in the state. So I don't necessarily need more Riesling in California. For those who grow it, keep on doing that shit. But explore all of these other things. All of this is so bloody exciting. It's not the same.
So what do you think California looks like in 20 years?
Who the fuck knows? I don't know. And listen, I'm a simple restaurateur. I'm not a wine grower. I know you just can't. A restaurant can turn one day to the next. Today I'm Italian. Tomorrow no one wants to eat Italian food. I'm going to go Thai, whatever that might be. A vineyard, you can't do that stuff. It does take years to do it. But I continue to hear about these pockets, like, not to sound like a Luddite, but Lodi. What Tegan and others are doing in Lodi with these old vine vineyards that were going to all be destroyed. That's seemingly brand new to us, yet these are 100-year-old vineyards planted. So California, just keep on discovering your patrimony, sticking it in bottle, honoring those grapes, those farmers, and it is a glorious goddamn wine world.
I think we've landed the plane.
There you go. Sam, shout outs.
We're in the midst of harvest, so first shout out is to all the people out there picking grapes and making wine right now. This is the peak of it all. As we listen, we are a couple of weeks out or a week out from Vinyl Sunday at the barn, Denmark Street Barn, with the Bone Diggers band. Lebo from ALO and a bunch of guys get together and do funked out, jammy Paul Simon songs. So that'll be fun. Ali Kai, Fiorella Boutron's doing the food for that. Tickets on sale at Eventbrite. Look up.
What's the date again?
October 6th.
October 6th.
4 o'clock at the barn, Denmark Street.
You have an event with a couple of folks who had passed away.
Event. That's the Sunday the 29th, honoring Jeff Hellman and John Cutler. Jeff Hellman was like one of the great tapers and tech guys of the Grateful Dead world. John Cutler and Dan Healy were like the two guys who built the studio at Club Front, and were the guys with Owsley Stanley building the Wall of Sound. I mean,
who took that over? Who bought the Wall of Sound?
Who did buy the Wall of Sound?
Dave Matthews Band.
Oh, really?
Yeah, after Jerry passed, they
bought their. There's a reason that happens. Dan Healy's daughter was working at a club in Denver, and Dave Matthews came through opening for some band,
the Tragically Hip or the Samples,
something like this, like early 90s.
Yep.
And she calls Dan and said, and she went on to become their like publicist,
or Big Head Todd and the Monster,
something like that. And sent Dave Matthews to some connection that she had. And so Healy was after he left the Dead, did a summer as their concert sound for the Dave Matthews Band. So there's a through line back to 19-year-old Tanner Walle in New York trying to have a career as a musician, and Paul says no, Tanner.
What kind of
sell them Riesling?
Sell them Riesling.
What are you a fan of?
Oh God, that's
to be honest, what feeds what I do at Terroir in the world of wine more than anything else is my musical preferences, which are the 80s British New Wave, what was then called the alternative scene, that's getting a massive resurgence today. But those 80s New Wave British bands primarily leading into Germany. I was late to the West Coast scene in the States, then led into the Nine Inch Nails scene and all of that tech-driven stuff. So still today, my children are not fans of it, but they get every day. And the Grieco household
and
is
the
the 80s
staff
day.
at Terroir.
Yeah.
And we know what's happening at Sam's house.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, of course we do.
Tanner?
Elephant in the room. I sounds like a cop out or a lazy answer, but I'm in that same camp as Paul, and I'm also a big Deadhead, and I think it was only further pushed along because of my move to Sonoma and becoming so close to the coteries and everybody else, and just the culture of the Northern California culture. But as Paul knows, I mean, I go through a lot of different phases. I punk when I was in the East Village. I love Lou Reed and Velvets. I love it all, man. That's all I got. I mean, I could talk forever.
Anything else coming up at Valley we should be knowing about?
Well, can we talk about one thing?
Yes.
Please.
That is part of the Summer of Riesling weekend at Valley?
Yes.
And music?
Yes.
So tomorrow
Oh yeah.
we're going to
yes,
the
of course.
movie theater and
The Sebastiani
Tanner-
Theater, classic,
Sorry?
beloved gem of our valley.
Yeah, the beloved gem of our valley, which I am the on the board, one of my favorite places in all of town. Thank you for reminding me of that. Of course, I was thinking I was going to say this and I forgot. I think somebody sucked the air out of the room.
That's probably
2 p.m. matinee. Not that anybody's going to hear this until after the fact, but 2 p.m. matinee tomorrow at the Sebastiani Theater, showing this brilliant, only hour-long BBC documentary called Krautrock: The Rebirth of Germany, which focuses on sort of the cultural resurgence of, well, sort of post-World War II and counterculture, introducing synths and punk and all those things, sort of revitalizing the youth of a post-World War II Germany. That's, again, at 2 o'clock. It's a matinee, obviously. We're serving some German Riesling. Paul's going to say a couple of words. And we'll probably start the film around 2:20, 2:30, and only goes to 3:30 before Paul goes and drinks his bottle of Prosecco and takes a nap, and then comes back to do lineup with our staff at around 4 o'clock to talk about everything we just talked about. But you only have 30 minutes that time. And then we open for service at 5 o'clock to rock and roll.
Excellent. Paul, shout outs for anybody?
Shout out. Holy crap. Shout out to my family, the Terroir crew back in NYC.
Nick Ferrante.
And to the winemakers on this planet Earth who make this yummy product
There you
that
go.
we get to savor many moments of many days and honor. And it brings many of us together with a smile on our faces just to have a good and simple conversation. Shout out to all of those people.
Well, I hope you have a lot of stories to tell about Sonoma and the pod. So,
Shall we go?
and friend of the pod, Lester Chambers, David Aguilar, Terry Haggerty, a botanist extraordinaire, and his brother Tim playing Sunday at the Sebastiani Theater at 5 o'clock. That's a great show to go to.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun.
Sounds amazing.
Go over there and take some photos for the guys. So, all right, that's it.
Subscribe, review,
Yep.
and tell your friends, but only the cool ones.
Absolutely. Paul, thank you so much for being a guest. Tanner, as always, man, so good to see you guys.
Great to see you.
All right. Thanks for listening, everybody. We'll talk to you next week.